Hey guys, it's Dave Kim. Thanks for dropping by, and a big thank you to everyone who provided such great feedback for my first video. Appreciate all the support and all the great suggestions. The two main critiques I got were regarding the audio quality and the single shot for my drawing. Yeah, if I'm being honest, I did have better audio equipment sitting in my closet, but I was being lazy and so I recorded on my iPhone with a lapel mic. Thanks to my nephew Sean for putting me on blast, so I had to step up my audio game. The second piece of feedback I got was regarding wanting to see more angles and close-ups of what I'm drawing. I'll definitely get on that, but I won't be able to for this series of drawings since these were done about a month ago and I was struggling to get even a decent shot back then. I do have a few ideas as to how to get some different angles and close-ups, so I'll be working on that as I continue to share this particular series of drawings with you. I'd like to be on a weekly cadence for these videos, but they may come out faster or slower depending on if I figure all of this out. Okay, so I went back and forth on whether I should talk about Derek Chauvin. I'm recording this a few days after the verdict and I'm still processing what we're currently living through. I happened to be going over some work stuff with a coworker when the verdict came out. Our initial reactions were ones of relief, and we shifted from work to our feelings about the trial and the current state of what's been going on. Now, I do want to preface my comments by saying that while I'm very well aware of what's going wrong right now, I'd rather not give it more power and momentum by mentioning it and constantly talking about how I'm against it. This past year and a half has been tough for all of us. We've had to live through not just the pandemic, but the insane fear around the pandemic. Perhaps we should have been more aware on what was the sign at the times when we saw that people were hoarding food, hand sanitizer, and even toilet paper. I mean, taking everything for themselves and from each other while some went without. And even worse, the gougers who try to profit from people's desperation and need. My mouth was on the floor as we witnessed selfishness come on in the name of quote-unquote freedom and capitalism. I suppose it was almost inevitable that things would escalate as they did. Of course, I agree that the unnecessary loss of lives has been maddeningly frustrating and infuriating. But I don't want to add fuel to the fire of anger that seems to be laying under the surface these days. I'm not sure who said this, but fighting fire with fire makes no sense to me. You fight fire with water. Any kindergartner wanting to be a fireman can tell you that. I guess I just come to find that by standing so passionately against whatever it is you're against, that it imbues it with even more power and momentum. So while I'm absolutely against all the hatred and violence that we're witnessing on what seems to be every few minutes, I'm going to speak out on how compassion, charity, and respect are the ways that we'll get to unity and where we need to get to, where we want to get to. I don't believe that these two stances are simply different sides of the same coin. I think Mother Teresa said it best when she said that she would never attend an anti-war protest, but would be there at the drop of a dime for a peace rally. Now, my not-so-serious example of non-resistance is my being a Chicago Bears fan living in California. I'm a transplant, having been born and raised in Chicago. I grew up on the monsters of the Midway, Walter Payton, Mike Ditka, and of course the superfans. And if I may, 85 Bears are absolutely one of the greatest teams in the history of professional sports. Now, all that being said, the Bears-Packers rivalry is one of the longest-standing rivalries in professional sports, and it's a lot of fun to be a part of. Naturally, seeing that green and gold G stirs up feelings of not-so-serious anger, and for some reason I can't stop seeing it everywhere I go between the months of September and January. Oh, and by the way, I had no issue with the Las Vegas Raiders' I Can Breathe tweet in support of George Floyd on social media. And if I'm being honest, I also completely forgot about the idiots who made t-shirts with that phrase in mockery of a dying man's last words. Although I do find it funny that the owner of the Raiders would eventually come out to claim ownership of that tweet after George Floyd's brother came out in support of the tweet, along with the support of everyone else. I'm going to put this out there, but we should be more than happy to receive the support of others, even if they say it in a somewhat ignorant sort of way. It's unrealistic to place expectations on others to say exactly what you want in the way that you want it said right from the get-go. Part of the process of building a stronger relationship is understanding that and working through it. That's what reconciliation is. growing together in the spirit of understanding. Honestly, my only grievance with the Raiders is regarding the signing of Kenyon Drake and diminishing the value of Josh Jacobs as a workhorse running back for fantasy football. But I'll wait until after the draft to see how things really pan out. Now, what's really interesting to me is that this has been called the George Floyd trial or the murder of George Floyd trial, and not the Derek Chauvin trial. I mean, it was called the O.J. Simpson trial, not the Nicole Brown Simpson, Ron Goldman trial. And it was called the Rodney King trial, not the Stacey Kuhn, Theodore Braceno, Timothy Wynn, and Lawrence Powell trial. While I agree with the sentiment that the victims should be appropriately memorialized and remembered with love, I'm not sure if we should place their name in history in this way. You think with the way that it's being reported at times, it was George Floyd on trial, not Derek Chauvin. I'm just saying it's interesting how narratives are communicated, since I don't think anything reported is unintentional. While I was Googling the names of the officers from that trial, I was a bit taken aback by seeing that verdict came out 29 years ago, almost to the day. What would follow would be a terrible scar in American history, where the residents of Los Angeles would come out in droves to hurt people, steal from one another, and to cause as much mayhem as possible. Being Korean American, it was hard to watch what was happening on the news. Everyone was well aware that there had been growing tensions between the different ethnic communities to the point where something was going to blow the cap off that lid. And 29 years later, we waited in anticipation to see if we as a people had learned anything in that time. The presence of the National Guard and the audience in tears showed me that all parties were expecting things not to go in the way that they did. Thank God that accountability was upheld for this guy's actions. And obviously we'll see how the sentencing and appeals go, but I'm still wondering, what's next for us? So whenever I think about this question, I always go back to my man Jiraiya from the anime Naruto. So just to give a quick backstory to the uninitiated, Jiraiya is the mentor of the main character, Naruto. And when Jiraiya was younger, it was prophesied to him that he would do two things. One, he would mentor the ninja that would change the world. And secondly, he'd write books that would also change the world. So while Jiraiya travels the world hoping to meet his destiny, he ponders upon the question, will there ever be a day when people can truly understand each other? And is that peace even a reality that can be achieved? During his travels, Jiraiya ends up having a few other pupils before he takes on Naruto. And one of those students says something very poignant to him one day. Honestly, I don't know what peace is, but if there is such a thing, I'll grasp for it and never give up on it. These characters had known nothing but war and death for most of their fictional lives, and their heart's desire was peace, despite the loss and heartbreak they experienced. They chose to look forward, to love life and all the joys that came with it. I remember the first time I mentioned this idea to a friend years ago, to which he replied, "Dave, that's a cartoon. Grow up and don't be stupid." I realize I'm referencing a comic book and cartoon, and I'm not a child, but I found myself very moved by how poignant Kishimoto, the author of Naruto, was with that piece of dialogue. Of course I'm not a child, and I'm not being stupid. What's stupid about wanting people to truly understand each other? What's immature about wanting community and not giving up on your people? Honestly, I don't know whether these thoughts, these ideals will ever amount to anything. But I won't give up on them either. Nor will I ever give up on working for them. Okay, so I really did want to talk about air fryers today. I did receive a lot of support from my fellow air fryer owners that it was indeed something very awesome to talk about, which spiraled me into side conversations about favorite recipes and different usages, and I promise I'll get back to it as soon as I can. But all kidding aside, I couldn't not talk about the trial and the verdict, and everything I ended up talking about kept bringing me back to it. In any case, thanks again for dropping by and for showing some love. I'll talk to you later.